Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. Success and income are no longer guaranteed. Paid time off becomes a thing of the past. But for many of us, the freedom, the flexible hours, and creative control make it all totally worth it. This week on Rebel Mom Boss, I'm speaking with an educator turned tattoo artist. Kirsten Diachidos spent 12 years as a high school science and art teacher before deciding to become a tattoo artist. She's also a mom of three, and she joins the Rebellion now. Hey, Kirsten.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm like obsessed with tattoo artists because you guys are like artists at a massive scale. Like most artists, right? Like you focus on like one or two pieces for like 6 months, whereas you guys are creating incredible artwork
Daily.
several times a day.
Daily.
That's absolutely wild. Is it hard for you to sort of maintain that level of creativity when you're like pumping out so much work every day?
So I've started doing something like on skin and off skin days. So like off skin days are days where I can like focus on the creative side of creating the pieces, especially custom pieces where there's a lot of things that matter to people in the pieces that we're doing. I want to make sure I take the time to really put that in. So I've learned in the past few years on how to kind of try and balance that a little bit more in terms of like the timing. Because if we're doing little things, it's not too bad. And now with digital technology, it makes it my hat's off to the artists who came before us, who had to draw everything on paper and tissue paper and retracing. Now with some of the digital tools we have, it's a little bit easier. But yeah, some of the bigger pieces, we can spend 20, 30, 40 hours like just researching and reference images and then pulling all the things. And then there's always that moment of when you show it to your client or send it out and you're like, oh my gosh, I really hope they like it, because you've poured your heart and soul into it. And like the art we're creating, when I used to do paintings, I could go back to it. I had like a week, I could set it aside. This is on somebody for life. They're going to see it every single day. And so for us, it's not just a work day. I'm marking someone with something that matters forever. So I'm going to make sure I put in the time and effort, but there are crunch days, there are some late nights and some very early mornings, and making sure that, But.
For sure. Do you ever feel, because I kind of do the same thing, I'll block time off in my calendar to focus on what I call actual work, because the rest of the time when I'm with clients, like I don't have time to do the things. But I always feel guilty because then I'll have people be like, oh my God, it's so hard to book an appointment with
100%.
you because your calendar is full for like 3 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not a me problem. Like, plan ahead, Do you ever feel guilty though? Because I do struggle with saying no, and it's happened before that I dip into my like work blocks to meet with clients.
More often than not, if I book a day off or I book time off to like try and focus on the other things in my life, when I have somebody come to me with something like they have a time limit or they have to get it done before this, or their dog just died and it's like really on the I have a tendency. I have a really hard time saying no. I have a really hard time saying no because I'm like, oh, I happen to have the time. Like, I forget that time was like sequestered for like other things. So yeah, there's definitely. I don't like saying no, and I don't like letting people down. But I'm learning. I'm learning slowly boundaries, because if I'm not in a good space or if I'm overworked or overtired, then the work is going to suffer. So it's really trying to strike that balance and make sure that I don't overburden, which I have a tendency to do.
So. Yeah. And like you're part of a team, which is really cool. So like I only hired my first employee a couple of months ago, and it was like, I couldn't believe I hadn't done it sooner. Game changer, not just for having somebody else to like do the work, but just to have someone to like talk to. Like it always feels like, I look at people posting like their work Christmas parties every year, and I'm like, party of one. Like,
you're like my little hat, my little string to myself. We have. Okay, so I've worked in multiple areas of my life, in multiple sectors. I worked in public health, then I worked in schools. I've worked with like big groups of colleagues. I have never had a team of people where we go in and it doesn't feel like work. It really doesn't. Like I joke that I'm retired because like I retired from teaching, and I feel like somebody who's retired who just gets to go and do their hobby. And I credit that to the team of people that I work with. Like it's funny because we're kind of all from different walks of life, and yet there's this family vibe and this love for each other and this support for each other, and like everybody's success is as important as our own. So like if I'm supporting, say, Mel or Pierre or Robin's helping me, each one of us, like it's so hard to put into words how grateful I am for the group of people that I work with. And like I hear all these horror stories from people who have these terrible coworkers and colleagues. I'm like, I love you, but I can't relate. like,
Yeah.
like you walk in and it's like home. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm self-employed, right? So, I have the worst colleagues ever.
So demanding.
I know. Never give me time off. Is that something that you struggle with? Like, you can book time off to focus on, like, designing your next client's tattoo, but like,
Yeah.
I have a hard time taking just straight up vacation. Is that something you struggle with?
Yeah, so Jean-Luc, my fiance, is kind of the driving force in that for me, where I'm like, because now, like if I take time off, when I was teaching, if I had time off, it was paid time off or I had sick days. Now I don't. If I don't work, I don't get paid. So for me to actually disconnect, like to not touch my iPad, like we just did a vacation where we sailed from Guadeloupe to Martinique on a catamaran. We were doing some diving. He's a dive instructor as well, and for me to actually put down the iPad and resist the urge to work even on vacation, he was like, you need a break. It's okay to take a break. And he'll have to remind me, it's okay to take a break. I'm like, okay. But when work doesn't feel like work, sometimes I have a hard time sometimes disconnecting. But once I finally do, I'm like, oh yeah, I needed that. Didn't realize how much I needed that, but yeah, I needed that. And then you come back even more motivated because it's like, okay, I had my, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because, my business has been growing for the last few years. So I've been meeting with a lot. Like, I'm a firm believer that, like, you should never be the smartest person in the room.
Oh, 100%.
So I always go seek out advice and stuff from people who've been doing this longer. And a bunch of the business coaches I've worked with recently, I notice huge difference in the advice I get from men versus women.
Interesting.
Even men who are parents
Yep.
parent differently.
It's different,
than
yeah.
women.
Yeah.
So when they talk about, like, yeah, I close off and I shut it off at 6 p.m. and I'm like, cool, but my daughter's daycare closes at 3 and I
Yeah.
gotta pick her up. So my workday ends earlier, which means I have to work in the evening. Like, that's
Yep.
just
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
just the reality. But that's something they don't really have to reconcile. And I was curious what
They
your
have
take
this
was on.
they have this
Yeah.
ability to compartmentalize a little bit more, I think. I think their mental load is a little bit different. So like Jean-Luc works as an engineer and he'll come in and he can turn off. He can just turn off and now it's like supper and home and relax, and I come home and it's okay, well, I got to get the supper made, I got to get the groceries done, then I got to get back to drawing, and then I have to message that client, and then so I still have a running list I'm going to be busy until at least 9-10 p.m. just keeping up with the social media, whereas his job, when he clocks out, the job's done. It doesn't carry the same weight. And so I think women who are moms, like we're a blended family. We've been a blended family for almost 13 years now. So I'm raising teenagers. So we've got 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, and an almost 14-year-old. And so they've got their lives too. And so they've got their jobs and they're going for their license and they've got their exams and their school and their sports and their activities. So even when I get home, day's not done. It just switches into the mom job now. So it's okay, who needs to be picked up, what time, who's working, okay, who's got this, who's got practice, okay, is the soccer stuff washed? Like, and so, yeah, there's no shut off. Like, it's just a constant running list. And I think moms carry more of that.
Yeah, and what was interesting, I read this crazy stat this week, and I need to share it somewhere, was that working moms work the equivalent of 2.5 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
We're doing like 90 to 100 hours a week, and we are actually spending more time with our kids as working mothers than our parents spent with us when they were stay-at-home moms.
Isn't that nuts?
Which is crazy, because they just like sent us outside, sent us to the basement.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
we were off on bikes for 6 hours. Like, the lights come on and that's when you come in, like.
Whereas,
yeah.
like, my daughter is glued at my hip if she's awake. If I'm cooking, she's in the kitchen with me. If I'm in the living room, she's in the living room with me. Like, she wants to be next to me at all times. So it's, I've been struggling a lot lately as somebody who has, like, sensory issues with that sensation of just never being alone.
Yeah. Oh, I can so relate to that. Like,
yeah, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is really hard for moms because we put so much pressure on ourselves. We're carrying our children's childhood in our hands. I always have this, like, one moment, one wrong word, one incident could be this like core memory for her that like traumatizes her for life. And I try not to think about it too much, but
yeah, there's that balance between overthinking and over worrying and just like trusting the process, but
and like trying to do better, like remembering the things that were traumatizing when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your approach to motherhood has been like. Like, you're way more experienced than I am. You're further along. My daughter's only 3. Share those nuggets of wisdom with us.
So having three of them and having being the mom and a stepmom, because that's a different role entirely. So like when you're a stepmom, you have some authority, but at the same time you need to respect that they still have their own mom and their own dad, and like that's primary and we can support that. Like my daughter, like I grew up, I was a competitive swimmer, but I was always a bigger girl, and so I like when I struggled with weight issues or when I struggled with like eating issues or when I struggled with body like all of that stuff I tried to maybe overcompensate too much for my daughter because I was like my weight was always a topic of conversation and had to, so there's things where we tend to the pendulum swings a bit too far because we want to protect them. Um, and so what I've realized, especially now watching them really blossom into like their own people with their own lives, their own goals, their own career paths, their own, is each kid is going to be very different. They may be similar to us and we can maybe see a mirror of ourselves in them, but still respecting that they have their own identity, that they're going to have their own experiences. And so trying to parent who our kids actually are as opposed to who we're worried about who they're going to become, like I see a lot of like having worked in schools forever, I see a lot of parents parent out of fear, like fear of, oh well, I was a rebel or I fell into the wrong crowd, so they parent their child and blah, blah, blah. Like so it's the really trying to step back and go, all right, this is your life, how can I help you support your goals, your dreams? Like, and we've told our kids forever, like school is great, and if you're good at school and academic, that's fantastic, it's going to give you, but what's more important is, are you happy? Are you happy? Are you waking up and finding joy in your life? Are you waking up? And all of us in there, it's funny because all of us, like stepmom, mom, dad, like ex-husband, all of us have changed careers recently. Like in the past
Oh, wow.
5 years, have all changed directions. And we're trying to kind of establish for our kids that it's okay to change your mind. You do not need to know at 16 or 17 what you're going to be when you grow up. And you don't have to be one thing anymore. That's the best part, is you can start in one direction and then change your mind or go back and take another class, or you meet somebody who, and I think the best advice that I used to give to students that I'm trying to give to my kids is just be adaptable. Life is going to throw you curveballs. Life is going to throw you where if you had asked me 6, 7, 8 years ago if I'd be a tattoo artist, I would have thought you were nuts. I had just spent 10 years of my life getting my education degree, doing my bachelor's, doing my master's. Like I was like an honor student. I loved designing curriculum. I absolutely adored the classroom. I was a lifer. There was no way I was going to change careers. I adored what I did all the way up until even when I changed, I still loved what I did. So that was kind of the best time for a segue because I wasn't bitter and broken yet. But teaching our kids that it's okay to change. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay to, be adaptable. And so I think no matter what, we're going to traumatize our kids in one way or another. We're going to say something dumb or something will slip out, or we do our best. And I think our generation tends to have a lot more insight. Do you know what I mean? We self-reflect so much more. I think we question so much more. I had a great talk with my dad recently. My dad's 86. My dad thinks in his head he's 40. He's got energy. Like my dad is unbelievable. I lucked out really in the dad department. And I said to him, I wish I could go back and have a conversation with my mom at the same age I am now. Like, I wish I could talk to her at like 43 and compare parenting notes and compare because I'm going, even with my cousins, we talk about this. I think our generation really, really is making honest and insightful efforts to raise our kids in the best way possible. I think a lot of us are.
Yeah, and there's so much I want to unpack.
Sorry, I feel like I just went on like a complete ramble there, but
God, no. Okay, so changing your mind is something that I can super duper relate to because like I worked in radio for the better part of a decade, and I too thought I was a lifer. That was my dream job since I was a little kid, was to be on the radio. And then like for me, it was a single pivotal moment that changed everything was when I had my daughter. When when I went on mat leave, everyone was like, we'll see you next year, and I was like, hell yeah, like there's no way I'm not coming back. Yeah. And then I spent a year at home with her and I was like, oh my God, there is no way I can go back. Like everything completely changed and I had to figure something else out. I'm curious if there was a moment like that for you or if it was a gradual transition.
Oh, like from teaching to tattooing or just in
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there were a couple little moments. we had just started coming out of the COVID bubbles. Like we were in the COVID bubbles, teaching on Zoom, not on Zoom, in person, not in person. Like that was the time frame when this all started to be. And so Robin, my boss now, the owner of the shop, I went to him as a client. I was working on my sleeve to honor my family, and we had started kind of talking, just that I was an art teacher and that I did arts and I'd been in arts forever. And I said, well, this was a type of art I had always wanted to try. I said, I had asked years ago about apprenticeships and stuff like that. And I said, everyone just kind of told me you start at zero and you're not paid and it's, you're kind of, low man on the totem pole. And he goes, well, it doesn't have to be like that anymore. I'm like, really? You're the first person to say otherwise. And he said to me, well, if it interests you, I could help you out. Oh, seed planted. So, looking back, there's so many things that came together in little synchronicities for that moment to be possible. And so I went home and I spoke to my dad and I spoke to Jean-Luc and I said, what do you think if I pour a little time, effort, and money? Because we were teaching mostly online. So in between classes, I had kind of like this downtime. And I think a lot of people turned to like the arts and creative stuff during that time because you had the time, you're stuck at home. And so I said, what do you think if I try my hand at it? Like if I actually invest in a decent machine and I get some fake skins and I try it. And they both went, we've been telling you for years to do this. Like, go for it. So I did. And by the next time I went to see Robin, I said, so I kind of did a thing. So I said, I got a machine and I've been kind of playing. Can I show you? And I showed him and he's like, this is your first time holding a machine? I'm like, yeah. And he asked me a tattoo. He goes, did you use like base shading in this? I'm like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, talk to me in art terms, not tattoo terms. Like, and so he explained and I said, okay, well, I'll try that. And by the third appointment that I had a whole bunch of other stuff done. And I had been badgered into tattooing Jean-Luc because he wore me down. So I went, I kind of maybe did something I shouldn't do, but I did. So I said, my fiance let me tattoo him. Can I show you? And he's like, you need to work here. So I showed, it was really like silver platter. You need to work here. And I went, oh, little problem. He's like, what's that? I'm like, full-time job, career, 3 kids, a commute. Like, he's like, I will work around all of that. He goes, you need to be here. I went, oh, okay. So he hands me this like 17, 18 page legal contract. Like, I mean, contract. And he goes, have a lawyer look this over. I'm like, a lawyer? I'm like, this is a tattoo shop, right? Like, this is not the tattoo shops I had in mind from like when I was like 18. And so I bring this contract home and I'm like, this is so professional, like ridiculous. Like I'm going, this is itemized and detailed and contracts and payments. And I'm like, so I show Jean-Luc and I show my dad and they're like, do it, go for it. Whatever you need, I will support you. And so I balanced both for a while. I was doing the apprenticeship. I did a full apprenticeship with Robin. And I would literally go teach during the day and then drive straight to the shop and work hours at the shop. And like, I was just, every hour I had that was extra, I was on fake skins, trying techniques but it was like, it just felt like everything was put in my path. All I had to do was walk it, and as the more and more time I was spending in tattooing, the more and more heavy and negative the school system felt. It was heavy during that time. It was hard. Everything was changing. You want to talk about being adaptable? Like, we never knew what was coming around the corner. Kids were stuck in classrooms all day with the same, like, it was heavy. And then I'd go to the shop and they'd be like, so, we made a meditation space for you guys. If you need to decompress, if you just like, it was like this stark black and white comparison. And so I had this moment where I posted something which I thought I was being kind of discreet about, but apparently I wasn't. I posted on Facebook something about choosing a path or in 2 directions. And my high school teacher messaged me. My high school teacher sends me a private message saying, is this about you leaving teaching? And I went, okay, so I guess it wasn't as, covert as I thought it was. And she goes, call me. And I went, okay. I'm like, I haven't spoken, been years. She goes, call me. And so we pick up, we start catching up. Like, she had my dad as a teacher. So we all have this little Zoom going on. And she goes, okay. She goes, do you have running shoes? And I went, yeah. She goes, run. She goes, just run. She goes, teaching will always be there. She goes, you have your degree. She goes, they need good teachers. They will always need good teachers. But she goes, you have something a lot of teachers don't. You have other interests and other talents. And she goes, you have nothing to lose. She goes, try your hand at it. And she goes, you can always go back to teaching. She goes, you can walk into any school at this point and they'll be like, yes, please. So she goes, do it. She goes, run. She goes, do you see the school system getting better in the next year, 5 years, 10 years? I'm like, hopefully, but like right now. And she goes, are you loving this? I'm like, yeah. She goes, do it. And so it was just, like these little pivotal moments where I'm like, okay, like it was just, and yeah, so I've had these little moments, and this is not the first time I flipped my life on its head and completely changed directions. I've done it 3 or 4 times now. So what I've learned is it's going to be okay. One way or another, I'm going to be okay. I have a good work ethic. I like working. I enjoy being productive. I enjoy being around people. So I'm like, even if this didn't work out, it would be okay. And so when I have that in the back of my head, that no matter what comes along, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to like climb whatever obstacle I need to. And I've got support and people. And so having that in my head, because I used to work nights at the Jewish General. So I worked in the delivery room for years, and then I went back and did my education degree. Then I worked so I've flipped directions a bunch of times, and every time it just worked out. It's going to work out. I'm going to make it work out. So taking that fear away, because I think a lot of people get stuck because they're afraid. Because if you can't predict what's coming, it's terrifying. And to take a leap of faith on yourself, oh, scary. Scary.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who, are living in fear themselves and have never changed jobs or careers, who will tell you, it's not going to work out.
Yep.
You don't have the skills to do that. Like, that was something I was told, like, you don't have a business degree. Like, how are you going to start your own business? You don't have an accounting degree. How are you going to do your own taxes? And I was like, I don't know, figure it out. There's a YouTube video for everything.
Everything. Yeah.
So, and like there's this
I'll
really
Google
it.
Yeah,
exactly. There's this great quote that I love that says, it'll all be okay in the end. And if it's not okay,
it's not the end. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I love. And it's so interesting because I feel like from the moment our kids can talk, people are asking them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's such a weird question because, I don't dream of labor. Like, my job is just a piece of who I am. Like, yes, I have a business and I care about it. Like, I'm passionate about what I do, but I also am a podcast host. I love to garden and grow vegetables. And I like to do crossword puzzles and read. Like, there's other parts of me. And it's so weird that from the age of 3, basically, we're asking kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't want that to be the kind of pressure my daughter puts on herself, that like I need to choose a job or a career before I've even like figured out my life or who I am or whatever.
I'm in my 40s. I'm still figuring it out, like I think the best answer to that, because we focus on the job, the career, like what are you going to do? How are you going to spend your time to support yourself is the root of that question. And the question should be, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. I want to feel joy. I want to, to me, that's what it should be. And if your job can support that, then great. If you are, your job is
hard. Yeah. It's a hard thing for older generations to really comprehend. And I'm talking more like your boomers, your silent generation. I had a conversation with a boomer recently and I said, like, I would retire tomorrow if I could. And he was shocked by that because he was like, I'm never going to retire. Like, I might cut down my hours, but I plan to work into my 80s, 90s. Like, I love it. And I feel like they don't like their partners. They don't talk to their kids anymore. They don't have friends or hobbies because they spent all their lives working. And I feel like I would retire tomorrow and I wouldn't be bored. I have a million other interests and, rich friendships. And I love my family. I'm close to my siblings. Like, I would be okay with not working. Don't you worry. I'll fill my time just fine. I'm curious what your take is on that, sort of that generational divide, especially since you mentioned how close you are with your father, what that looks like for you.
It's really funny because we had to talk about this a couple days ago, not that long ago, where his generation came through you go to school, you get educated, you get a job, you stay at that job for 30 to 40 years, you have a pension, and then you get to live. Like, once you're secure. And like Jean-Luc and I, we had a conversation because we go on adventures. Like, we do a lot of diving. We do shark diving. He became a dive instructor. We're learning to sail this summer. Like, we want to see the world. We're like planning for retirement while still living bits and pieces of that now. So that I'm like, what if retirement doesn't come? What if that day never arrives? Like, I don't want to put my life off until I'm 60 when I can't climb a volcano anymore. Like, so there's this balance. Whereas my dad, he was looking at some of the videos, and we climbed Mount Pelée recently, which is a ridiculously difficult hike. And we were way underprepared for it because we didn't do the right research. It was just like, cool, we're here, let's do it. And then realizing after, oh, we might be in over our heads. But I came back with like all these amazing stories of climbing this volcano and like the things we saw and the overcoming. And my dad's like, you guys are, he goes, you are really living your life. We're not existing through it. We're not just working through it. We are going out, but we are specifically planning adventures and to like, I need to feel like I'm making the most of my time. And so that comes because my mom was physically disabled. So my mom had very, very limited mobility. And my dad basically spent most of his time taking care of her. My dad was a teacher for 30 some odd years, had a second career after that in finance. My mom was a nurse. Like it was very typical teacher, nurse, full-time job, pension. We did the family trips to like Florida and Disney, but there weren't the grand adventures. Whereas I feel my entire life is a collection of grand adventures. And I know where that stems from. I know exactly where that stems from. As a teenager, I volunteered in palliative care. So I was 15 and a half, 16 when I started volunteering on Fridays. And me and two of my friends from school, we would go and sit with patients who didn't have family. So they're dying alone. And so our job was just to be company, just a friendly ear, a friendly face. And it was at a Jewish hospital. It was at Mount Sinai. So we would do Shabbat and we would hand out like the bread and we would just sit with them. And when you sit with people in their last few days of life or their last moments and they're reflecting, because there's a lot of reflection that happens, none of them said I should have made more money. None of them said I should have worked longer hours. None of them said, all of them said was, I wish I traveled more. I wish I forgave that person. Why did I hold that grudge? They want to leave this legacy. And I remember starting to think then, when I'm 90 and immobile and in a rocking chair or a wheelchair, I want great stories to tell. I want to be able to sit there and go, oh, that time I climbed the volcano, or that time I fed the sharks, or that time that, and so it planted a seed in my head to live almost backwards. Like, what are the things I want to do between now and those moments? Because we are going to, and I saw my mom with her disability lose more and more mobility and lose more and more ability to go places, do things, to even walk. She couldn't even walk, like it was, and I'm like, I'm going to utilize this body, my health, this vessel, this life to have the adventures, and to,
Having those adventures does something to you. Like, I don't know if you remember, it was like 10 years ago, they launched WOW Air, this new airline, and they were offering $99 flights from Montreal to Iceland. And at the
How
time,
did I miss that?
Like, I had always wanted to go to Iceland just because, like, I don't like the heat. I'm not a summer girly. I love the snow. And I used to always joke, like, one of these days I'm going to go to Iceland in the summer to escape the heat, the way snowbirds go to Florida to escape the winter.
That's brilliant.
When I saw that, I was like, I didn't even have a passport. I just, like, bought the ticket.
That's amazing.
$99 each way. And then I was like, I'll figure it out. And I did. I got a passport, whatever, did what I needed to do. And I went by myself. And, like, my whole family was like, you're insane. You're going by yourself for 3 weeks to Iceland? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, figure it out. And like,
that's amazing.
Credit that trip with like changing who I am as a person, because when you travel with another person, you have that person to rely on, right?
Yeah.
To talk to decompress with. Something goes wrong, you've got someone to troubleshoot with. When you're alone, it's not only have to figure it out by yourself, but it also forces you to meet new people, because you can't go out to dinner and just sit there and talk to your partner. You got to find someone to talk to. So like, I went to a bar, met this girl from California who was also doing pretty much the same thing as me. And she's a lifelong friend. Like, she came to my wedding when I got married. And that never would have happened if I hadn't traveled alone, because even if I was with a friend, we would have just been talking to each other.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
So like, I always tell everybody, like, you need to take a trip by yourself, somewhere international where you don't speak the language, and figure it out, because that is like a soul discovery journey. Have you ever done anything like that, like a solo trip?
It's funny. I haven't traveled alone. I just like it hasn't happened. Like, I had my daughter I was 27 when I had my daughter, so I went from like married to like this, like, so I've been in mom zone for a long time. And again, I'm not traveling this summer. I'm not traveling alone, but it's me and just the two girls that we are traveling to Costa Rica for 10 days, leaving the boys home. They're going to do their own thing in August. But I'll be the sole adult on this one, but I've never actually had the opportunity to travel completely by myself. Honestly, I think I'd love it. I think I'd revel in it. Like, I like alone time. Like, I spend all day with people and kids and pets, and like, there's constantly stimulation. So when I get alone. I'm quite happy with my own company. I have no problems with my own company.
Highly recommend Iceland. It's like one of the safest
It's
places
on my
in the
bucket
world.
list. Oh, it's on my bucket
And what
list.
was cool, because I went in the summer, there was no night. It was 24 hours of daylight. So I could go out with people, like at the time, like Iceland was in like the Euro Cup, a big
Yeah.
football thing going on. And so I would go out, watch the game, go out afterwards, and walk back to my hostel at like 2 a.m. with the sun shining in the sky.
That's amazing.
So you feel so safe because
Yeah.
you're not like
In the
at
dark.
night, you know? Exactly. It was so cool. So highly recommend. A little off track there. So before we wrap up, I did want to ask you, because you went from teaching, you're also a mom,
Yep.
into being a tattoo artist.
Yeah.
Were there any transferable skills? Because that's something I love to focus on, because I think a lot of moms in particular,
All of them.
we undervalue. We're like, oh, I'm just a mom. Like, I can't do anything else. But in reality, we're so much more.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm curious if you noticed any transferable skills.
A lot. Yeah. Well, especially having been an art teacher.
Well, for sure.
Those all kind of transferred. Color theory and line work and composition. And it's funny because I've given like little tutorials at the shop on like art theory for things like how ink is gonna, how you have to think about this person's skin tone color versus. So a lot of the art teacher skills definitely transferred. The one that I think is most important with kids, with tattooing, and with the classroom is dealing with multiple personalities, multiple backgrounds, multiple types of people, multiple things that are important to them. And so our clientele, now it's nice because it's one-on-one. It's like me and the client, where I don't have like a room of 35 kids, throwing erasers and stuff. But when I was in a classroom, every kid would walk into that room with their own background, their own issues. Stuff might have happened at home. Something might have happened at recess. Something's going to affect how they learn. Something's going to affect. And now even with clients, like, why people choose to mark their bodies is usually a very, very close and personal reason. Most of what we do, I'd say probably a good 95% of the tattoos I do all have meaning, all have something. And getting to hear those stories the same way I would with students. Like, when you can tell that kid's just a little off that day and you take the minute to go, are you okay? And so being able to kind of read the room, being able to kind of read that person, like we get people from all walks of life. I love when I get the grandparents coming in for first tattoos, like the 70, 80, when they've never been tattooed before, and making them comfortable. I think it is something that I've done well in most of my, in most of the jobs that I've had, is trying to make people feel at ease. I want you to feel comfortable. I want you to feel loved and supported. I want this to be about you and your day. And I used to try and do that the best I could in my classroom. And I think a lot of what I learned there still applies to the adults I kind of work with now. Like, I want to hear your story. People want to be heard. People want to be, like everyone's got their story to tell. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of the job. Like I can have a conversation with someone and Robin will walk in and be like, oh, how long have you known them? I'm like, oh, I met them 2 hours ago. He's like, but you're talking about their cousin's kid and their dog. And I'm like, yeah, like that's how you get to know, But a lot of my clients have become like good friends, and we talk outside, and, like just you really get that moment. And I love that now I can do that even more. Whereas in a classroom, when I had, 8 groups of 28 plus kids, you didn't always have the time to get to know, and now it's I want to know why this is important to you. I want to have those conversations. I adore that part. Like if you come and get tattooed by me, you have 2 options. Most people either sleep or we chat the whole time. So
I love that. And it's like, I feel like people are just so desperate for connection in a world where we just have less and less connection. Like we're using AI for everything, contactless delivery. I mean, some of them are fantastic. I haven't been to a grocery store in like 5 years, which is amazing. I just get everything delivered. It's at my door. I don't have to worry about it. But maybe I should be getting out to like, I remember I went to Walmart with my daughter like a year ago. She was 2 and she was like looking around like, what is this place? And like there was like the loudspeaker and like she was sitting in the cart and she just kept like reaching and putting things in the cart. And she'd never been to a grocery store before, like because she's a pandemic baby, so we didn't do that. And then it just was easier to keep the delivery, like whatever.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh my god, I need to like show her the world, like what is happening right now. But
when Walmart is like the exciting,
but I think so often people are like, well, I can't afford to take my kid to Disneyland or what, but there are so many cool adventures you can have without going anywhere. Like literally going to Walmart could be an adventure if you make it one, right?
Everything can be an adventure if you make it. But I agree with you. I think humans, we forget that everything we have is kind of extra. We need food, shelter, clothing, and a sense of community. Like to feel fulfilled, we don't need that much. Everything else we have and acquire and whatever, it's extra. We're lucky to have it. We're, like the abundance we have is pretty incredible. Like hot showers didn't exist, 200 years ago? Like when you think about that and wrap your head around like having indoor, like my grandmother didn't have indoor plumbing for the first part of her, like that's not that long ago.
My grandmother couldn't get a credit card until she was in her 30s. Like
Yeah,
women
exactly.
couldn't have credit cards until the 70s. Like what?
Yeah. So when you take a step back and you go, okay, we need just a sense of community, a sense of, and AI is, don't get me wrong, AI is great. All of our technological advances are fantastic. They do make our lives a lot easier. But at the same time, I think we have lost that little bit of human connection. And I love that I'm in a job that I get that. I get face-to-face, one-on-one, like it's absolutely incredible. So I don't know.
Love that.
Yeah, I feel lucky.
Kirsten Diachidos can be found on Instagram. You should follow her, Kirsten Tattoo Arts. You should also book a consult with her to plan your next tattoo. You can go to wildmagnoliatattoos.com. Thank you so much for being here today, Kirsten. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. So anytime. This is absolutely a pleasure.
If you like what you heard today, make sure you follow and subscribe to Rebel Mom Boss with Robin Flynn wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, and make sure to leave a review because that's how other moms will find the podcast too. Until next week.